Hi, everyone. This is Ellen from the Astrology Journal. In the podcast that follows, I had intended to talk about the Capricorn full moon chart, and that's happening Capricorn, or the full moon is happening in Capricorn on July 3rd. Today's July 2nd, so it's tomorrow, July 3rd, Eastern time, East Coast of the United States. I had intended to talk about the Capricorn full moon, but I ended up talking about the Saturn retrograde chart. And the reason I did that was to give context. Saturn rules Capricorn, so it's relevant in that regard. But also, on the day before the new moon for this lunation cycle, Saturn turned retrograde. So on June 17th, Saturn turned retrograde. And then on June 18th, we had the new moon in Gemini. And so I ended up talking just about Saturn retrograde. In that chart, I said incorrectly that the Pluto and the Sun were in a novile series aspect with one another. They're not. They're in an inconjunct aspect. I did say that, and that's true. But the novile series aspect is between Pluto and the Moon. So I just wanted to correct that. In terms of everything else I said, it doesn't actually make a huge difference because that novile series aspect is 140 degrees. And 140 degrees falls on the natural wheel at 20 degrees of Leo. And 20 degrees of Leo is the second half of Leo. It's a gibbous phase part of Leo. And that gibbous phase energy is like Virgo energy. And the whole thing that I was talking about in that podcast, or that I am talking about in the podcast that follows, is the transition between Leo and Virgo, trying to explain and make sense of what that transition is about. So it doesn't really make any difference in what I talked about. But I just wanted to make that correction. And then just quickly looking at the Capricorn full moon chart, I haven't looked at it in depth, but you can see there's a couple of interesting things going on if you're watching this on video. Venus is in a biquintile relationship with Neptune, and that biquintile has to do with our gifts and talents. And it also, by the way, is in the second half of Leo, just like the novile series aspect. And then Venus is also in an inconjunct, an inconjunct, or is that a quindecile? No, it's in a quindecile relationship with Saturn. Quindecile is 165 degrees. That's Virgo. So once again, we have this Leo-Virgo energy. Venus is also our gifts and talents. So the biquintile has to do with our gifts and talents. Venus has to do with our gifts, talents, resources, raw material. Venus is also the lower octave of Neptune. Neptune is the highest possible expression of love, the highest love there is. And unconditional, just given no matter what. Venus is love incarnated, or the way that I like to think about it is Venus is love incarnated into human form. It's almost like in incarnating in these human forms, we're being given and in this realm, we're being given a playground through which or in which to practice love in human form. So Venus rules Taurus, that's love for ourselves, self-relationship. Venus rules Libra, that's relationship with another, so love for another, or sharing love with one another. So it's the idea of, to me, a practice ground, especially with this gibbous energy, this idea of practice ground. The gift that we're here to practice on one level is love. We're given love, that's our gift. And now we get to experience it in our bodies. We get to practice feeling that and being that in our bodies, and then feeling that and sharing that in relationship. The other interesting thing about this Venus, Neptune, Saturn kind of relationship going on is that it's one way to think of it could be this idea of let go and let God. So the quindecile can be about compulsion, a lot of intense action, you keep repeating something. But perhaps what's happening there is it's letting us know that we're being ineffective. Ineffective would be Virgo or gibbous energy. And also kind of Capricorn, Saturn energy. we're not being effective. And so perhaps it's giving us a signal that it's time to let go and let God. And perhaps what we're practicing, or what we're being, the opportunity that's being given to us, the territory we're entering into, you could say, is the territory of practicing the skill of letting go and letting God. That's one way of thinking about it. Pluto is in a keen docile relationship with Mercury. So to me, that's striking that there are two keen docile aspects in this chart. And they're both waxing keen deciles, meaning they both fall in gibbous, in Virgo, the gibbous phase. So again, the keen docile is 165 degrees. If you count starting from 0 degrees Aries and you count 165 degrees, you wind up at 15 degrees of Virgo. So keen docile energy is Virgoan and gibbous in nature, that waxing keen docile. Mercury rules Gemini, and the new moon was in Gemini. Mercury now was then and now is in Cancer, and Cancer is nurturing and nourishment. And so again, perhaps if we're trying too hard, maybe we're needing to let go and allow ourselves to be nurtured and nourished. Another way to think about this is the idea of birthing mercurial energy. So mercurial energy and Gemini energy is curiosity, is a child at play. So if we're working too hard, if we keep banging our head against the wall, maybe we're being invited to be curious and to kind of start to remember play and bringing playful energy into our work and into our service. So those are just a couple of ideas that I have about the Capricorn full moon. Of course, we'll know what's true for each of us individually as we walk through it. But I just thought I'd share those ideas. And then I'll just say goodbye for now, and the podcast will follow, and you'll hear my thoughts on the Saturn retrograde chart. And hopefully that will give some context also. Okay, thanks for listening, and take good care. Bye. Hi, everyone. This is Ellen from the Astrology Journal. So I want to talk about the full moon, the Capricorn full moon, but I want to talk about it within the context of the Saturn retrograde cycle, because the new moon happened a day after Saturn went retrograde. And in my view, the theme of the Saturn retrograde is reality testing. And what do I mean by reality testing? I mean, there's the reality that we create, our conditioned reality. Saturn rules Capricorn. And this is the idea of the conditioned reality. It's the Capricorn aligns with the last quarter phase. And that's the phase where we essentially get reality testing. It's like, okay, we've done this, and this. And now we get the results of that. So that's what I mean by reality testing. Right now, Saturn is in Pisces, and Pisces represents the divine, unconditional love, the source, universal power, essence, whatever you want to call it, whatever your word is for that, which is bigger than us and that creates us, if you believe in something like that. That's what Pisces is. And Saturn, our conditioned reality, is now in Pisces. It's meeting the ultimate reality. And so we may be seeing where we're off, right? We may be finding where we have been out, our conditioning has been out of alignment with what's really true. So that's part of what I mean by reality testing. In this chart, there are a couple of interesting aspects. There's an inconjunct. So this is the Saturn retrograde chart. There's an inconjunct between Pluto and the Sun. And that inconjunct is just shy of 150 degrees. So it's within the orb of the inconjunct. The inconjunct is 150 degrees. You can have, it can be an inconjunct and be a little before 150 degrees or a little after. This one happens to be just before. It's about 147 degrees or something like that. So if you look at the natural wheel, and I'm doing this on video if you want to look on the video, and you start at 0 degrees Aries, that's the start of the zodiac, and you count around remember that every sign is 30 degrees, and you count around to 150 degrees. So you get Aries to Taurus, that is 30 degrees, and then to Gemini, another 30 degrees, 60, etc., until you get to 150 degrees, and that takes you to the start of Virgo. But this inconjunct falls just a little shy of that in Leo. So just keep that in mind. And then there's another interesting aspect. And this is a Novile series aspect. It's 140 degrees. So I don't know exactly what the name of that aspect is, but it's one of the Novile series aspects. So it's the Novile series aspect is the Novile is 40 degrees. So 40 plus 40 is 80, plus another 40 is 120, and then plus 20, which is a half a novile, whatever that is, a semi-novile, then you get 140. So it falls in the Novile series aspect. The Novile series of aspects. So this Novile series aspect goes from Pluto to the moon, to the sun. And if you count 140 on the natural wheel, that brings you to 20 degrees of Leo, which puts it inside the gibbous phase. So if you remember, if you read my article on the phase shifts, at 15 degrees of every fixed sign, there's a shift from one phase to another. And so at 15 degrees Leo, there's a shift from the first quarter phase to the gibbous phase. And this Novile series aspect between Pluto and the sun, and keep in mind that the sun rules Leo, falls in the gibbous phase, falls in Leo, but the gibbous phase, the second half of Leo. So it's not in the first quarter phase, it's in the gibbous phase. And the inconjunct also, if it were an exact inconjunct, it would fall at the beginning of Virgo in the gibbous phase. This at 147-ish degrees, it falls in the gibbous phase, but in the end of Leo, about 27-ish degrees of Leo. So we have this gibbous phase energy, but Leonian in nature, sun, vitality, Leonian in nature. And one of the things that I think about this shift, so in evolutionary astrology, they talk about the shift from Leo to Virgo. And they talk about Leo as being like the right side up pyramid. And Leo, the lion, is on top, roaring its authority, right? And Leo, we think of as vitality, expression, the child just exuberantly expressing herself or himself or their self. And then Virgo is, they say, the opposite. It's the pyramid turned upside down, and Virgo is at the bottom, and it is the humble servant. Now, humble servant doesn't have to mean inferior and lacking worth. That all depends on what comes before. But humble servant is simply a shift from the center is me to I am channeling. You could say, so opposite of Virgo is Pisces, which is the divine. So I am channeling through me in service. I am in service to that which is greater than me. And I am the vessel. I prepare my vessel so that this greater power can flow through me so that I can be in service of it. Again, it's not about arrogance. I'm flowing the channel. I'm the channel flowing the whatever. It's just being in humble service to that which is greater, understanding that there is a much bigger picture than me. Leo is, this is me. And Virgo understands there's a much bigger picture. Virgo is also a mutable sign. It's a transition between all of the personal development that happens. Who am I? What, do I have worth? I'm learning my immediate environment. I'm learning to nurture and comfort myself and be nurtured and comforted. I'm learning to express myself and find my creativity. So that's the bottom half. And then the upper half is about, we're moving out into the world. And the first step into the outer world beyond ourselves, and beyond our immediate family and all that is Libra, relationship with the other. And Virgo sits between Leo and Libra. So we can say that Leo is the height of personal development. And then to grow more, we have to actually kind of learn to bring our light in our creativity into service to something more than ourselves so that we can step into relationships as equals. It wouldn't work to be in relationship, really. I don't think it would work very well if you had two kind of ego, you could say, just two people shining their light and they're only concerned with themselves shining their light. But if they can bring that into service and they can combine that light and they're both now bringing it into service to something greater than themselves, and that becomes even greater than both of them. And it serves everybody. I don't know if I'm explaining that well. As always, I never know if I'm explaining it well. But anyway, that's a general idea. And Virgo is about skill development. So how do we develop humility? Well, first of all, we recognize that we have a gift. And so gift is Taurus. That's the first earth sign. Virgo is the second earth sign. So in Taurus, we find our raw materials, our resources, and our gifts, and we find our worth and our value. But that's all raw potential. In Virgo, in order for that to be realized potential, which happens in Capricorn, the final earth sign, we need to go through this Virgoan stage of preparation and skill development. And so it's really about when I was growing up, I was an athlete and I was a natural athlete and I did really well at the local level. But I didn't understand that that was just raw potential. I didn't understand that that's something that you enter into a practice, a skillful practice, and develop it beyond what that raw potential is. What I did, and to my credit, I didn't really have help. But what I did was I kind of like just tried to eke out everything I could from that without actually recognizing that there's a process of developing it. And if I did it in a certain way, I could have developed it and improved it over time and realized the full promise of that raw material, that raw gift. And that's not what I did. So Virgo is a really, really important phase. If we're going to master ourselves and our lives, we have to go through Virgo. And through this process of developing our gifts, it isn't about, so Leo is the second fixed sign and Taurus is the first fixed sign. So one manifestation of that raw material is, look at me, this is me, like the little child discovering that it can do something. And that's what it cares about. And it's this beautiful moment of realization, but it has to be taken beyond that. It has to go beyond this idea of this is all about me. This is me. Look at me. I'm so special. I'm this, I'm that. And all of that is true. But if you really want to develop that gift and you really want to contribute in the world, it has to be taken that next step. You have to go into it and you have to start to learn it and develop it. And that's where you learn humility. You start to understand, I have this gift. And what can I do with this gift? How can I use this gift in a way that allows me to grow within even more, but also allows me to contribute in a positive way beyond me? So I personally think this shift from Leo to Virgo is the hardest shift in the whole zodiac. It's going from essentially pride, egocentric pride in a way, I guess I would call it, to humility. And humility doesn't mean we don't have pride. It doesn't mean we don't have ego even, but it just means that we've sort of stepped back a little bit and we've just grown where it's about growing more humble. And humble, remember, Taurus, worth, is the first earth sign. So humble isn't about getting rid of worth. The foundation of humility is genuine worth within. But it's about taking it further, and it's about understanding it's more than just about me. So I think in one essay or article that I wrote, I talked about worth as being about, or I talked about humility as being about grounded worth. And maybe that's the best way to talk about it. Worth, grounded is earth, and worth, of course, is Taurus. And so in Virgo, we're learning to ground our worth in our skills, in our crafts, in our development by learning all of those things more. So now going back to the phases, the shift at 15 degrees Leo from the first quarter phase to the gibbous phase. I think what's happening here is that in the first part of Leo, this is the first quarter phase. It's like we are out in the world. We are establishing ourselves as independent beings. We're, finding our work. We're finding our community. We're finding our families. We're finding our homes. We're starting to, kind of create the grooves that will allow us to settle into our lives. But right now we're establishing all that, and we're just going out in the world, and we're finding everything. And it's almost like the world is opening up to us, because we're young, we've got lots of energy, and the world loves that. And so the doors are just opening for us. You could say, this is energetically, this is the idea. And then there's maybe a point that comes, and it's like the doors maybe aren't opening so easily now. And why is that? What's going on there? Why aren't they opening? And I think what's going on is there's a shift happening, and we're developmentally, we're having to move on beyond just laying down the foundations for our lives to starting to do the work of creating the skill and the practices and the whatever that allow us to reap the benefits of the foundations we've laid down. If we've laid down all these foundations and then we just squander it, like we show up at work or whatever, but we just kind of go through the motions or whatever, and then we're not actually, if we don't learn how to save money, if we don't learn how to, and I'm speaking from experience here, so I think it's that there's a developmental shift going on, and it's time to start changing our focus from that work to more internalized work. The first quarter phase is yang in nature, and the gibbous phase is yin in nature. And so yang, again, in evolutionary astrology, is moving out from the center, and yin is moving in backward in towards the center. So interestingly, we're focusing within on ourselves. Yet in Virgo, we're doing that so that we can come into service to others. So I think in that second half of Leo, what's happening, and just really quickly, that's so interesting, because the yin yang symbol, it's not, one side isn't all yang and the other side isn't all yin. There's a dot of yin in the yang, and there's a dot of yang in the yin. So both are there. It's just what's more prominent. And you could almost say that if we're in yang, then the yin maybe is serving the yang. And if we're in yang, if we're in yin, then perhaps the yang in some way is helping to accent or serve the yin. That's just an idea that I just thought of. So take it for just that. Anyway, so in that second half of Leo, what I was thinking when I wrote that article on the phase shifts is that, or the fixed sign shift, I think is what I called it. We're shifting, and instead of it being about exuding our light exuberantly outward, we're starting to internalize and integrate our light. And we're starting to learn the skills and the gifts of it. We're starting to maybe learn more who we are and what we came here to bring in service. And I don't know any better words than in service. I know that can be like an overused phrase, but right now I don't have another way to talk about it. So, in the Saturn retrograde chart, we have these two prominent aspects. If you're looking on, or you can look at the chart, I'll post it in the show notes for the podcast. There's that T-square, which looks like a triangle in the chart between Pluto and the nodes. So Pluto is has the green circle around it on the inner wheel, and the nodes have the pink circles around them. And you can see that triangle shape with the two green lines and the orange line. And it looks like a triangle bell, like, one of those musical instruments. And these two kind of lines are coming off it. And they're like the stick you use to or whatever it is you use to hit the bell to make a sound. And so it's almost like, okay, we're making a sound. If you think about meditation, they use bells, and it helps you it's meant to bring your attention back. So it's like, okay, pay attention to this. We're going to tune this bell. We're going to ring this bell. Pay attention. And the Pluto nodal T-square is about evolving ourselves from what we were. The South Node is our evolutionary past, our foundation, to what we are becoming. North Node, our evolutionary trajectory. And so it's like, okay, so pay attention. This is how we do this. How we do this is we start to integrate our light. Remember, this inconjunct involves the sun, which rules Leo, and that is falling, that aspect is falling in the second half of Leo. Remember, 150 degrees starts at 0 degrees Virgo, but this is an applying aspect, which means it hasn't quite reached 150 degrees. So it's in the last part of Leo. And it's the sun involved in that. The sun rules Leo. So this idea of the solar light and the need to integrate it, to bring it more into more into balance within ourselves so that we can bring it into service. And again, and then the moon, which is Pluto in evolutionary astrology, is the soul, and the moon is that part of the soul that decides to come in and incarnate and have this experience in this lifetime. And the nodes, they're the lunar nodes. So the South Node is showing us from an evolutionary astrology perspective, if you're willing to consider things like past lives, and there's some people don't believe in past lives. Some people think, oh, that's a so been there thing. It doesn't, that's not the right way to think about it. And then there's the idea of parallel lives, and I have no idea what's actually true. But in evolutionary astrology, we talked about past lives. So I'll talk about that. So the South Node is representing those past, little parts of the soul that came in and had their experiences. And so that's kind of what that's representing. So it's everything we know from that. The South Node has all of the skills that we've developed and learned, from there. And then the North Node are kind of like the future lives, what we're wanting to evolve to and incarnate going forward. You could say something like that. Hope I explained that well. Probably not, but anyway, it was the best I could do. So anyway, that's the Saturn retrograde, and it's this idea of reality testing. So the reality testing, as it has to do with this idea of Leo going into Virgo, is like, oh, I think I'm someone. And then reality comes along, and it's like, maybe you get trounced. If you think about a sporting events, maybe you think you're the best athlete on the planet in whatever thing you're doing, and you get trounced on in competition. It's like, whoa, and so it's like this reality testing, and that moment is meant to help you see that you have work to do, and to saying yes to that work and entering into it, you start to, that to me is the opportunity to start to develop true humility. So that's just one example that I can think of. But the idea is, the reality testing is, it's not just about our, great exuberant expression of our light, which isn't to say, by the way, that's wrong, but there's another layer of development that has to also happen. We don't want to lose our joy. That's not what I'm talking about. We don't want to go in and do practice and lose our joy and have this dreary life of, practice and apprenticeship or whatever. It's not about that, but it's just about changing our relationship with it. And starting to recognize that we have a gift and we are fortunate to have that. And how can we develop that? And how, we're blessed to be able to bring that into service. So we're blessed to have those gifts, and we're blessed to be able to develop them. And we're blessed to be able to then share them and help. If we all do that, then we're all kind of contributing our gifts, and we're all helping to benefit one another. As we go. So the reality testing is, where am I? The reality testing might be a door closes in my face. Why did that door close? Well, it's because it's a different energy now. Maybe I was an actor and, I just could get any part I wanted. And now, like, maybe I was a young actor. It's like, but my natural kind of whatever isn't taking me anymore. So maybe I need to take classes or something like that. I don't know. These are just ideas. But to me, this is what this Saturn retrograde cycle is about. This idea of reality testing. I think about in the Star Wars series. I think it might even be the first one where Luke Skywalker has to go into the dark cave, and he meets him. He doesn't know this, but he's meeting himself. He meets somebody he's scared, and he uses his saber, his lightsaber or whatever, and knocks the head off or something. And then he discovers that it's himself. So he meets the dark side of himself. And it's like that's reality testing. I'm still not willing to see my shadow. That would be an example. I had an experience the last couple of weeks where I had a couple of things come up where I had to, that involved kind of relating, communicating with other people. And to me, that was reality testing. I failed on both counts. I was impatient, and I was superficially respectful and kind, but I was kind of impatient about it. And I was kind of, in one case, I was kind of affronted. And I talked negatively, processing it. I talked negatively to other people about these things. And so, and thinking about this and looking at this chart, I'm like, whoa, that was a reality. That was a reality test for me. That showed me where I am. If you look at the chart, the moon and the sun, which in the next day, so on June 17th, we had the Saturn retrograde, and then on June 18th, we had the new moon. So in this Saturn retrograde chart, the moon and sun are just finishing up their last month's cycle. So it's the balsamic phase. And so that can kind of be bigger. And the idea that if it's something is kind of bigger and it's in your face, it's so that it can come into your awareness, so that you can start to see it, and then you can make sense of it. This is one of the reasons, by the way, that I do love astrology. I've had my ups and downs with it, and my uncertainties and all of that. But if I hadn't looked at the astrology charts, I probably wouldn't have had the reality test moment. I probably wouldn't have recognized that whole thing that happened in terms of communication as a reality test moment, and understanding what that was about and how and what that was showing me. So back to the sun and the moon, they're both in Gemini, communication. So how are we communicating? I posted the other day with just a question. I don't think it had anything to do with it. I was looking at Mars and Venus, which you can see over here, Mars and Venus in the chart in Leo. They're in a balsamic phase. And I was talking about, do we want war or do we want peace? Well, part of that starts with our communication. Our inner communication, but then also our outer communication. Our inner communication is going to help us understand our relationship. Do we have a sense of worth? And if we're always negatively bashing ourselves, then maybe we want to look at Taurus, and maybe we have some worth development to do. And there may be a lot of really good reasons for that. But our communication maybe can help us see that. So anyway, do we want war or do we want peace? Well, it may be part of the place it starts is Gemini, communication, and part of the place it starts is Taurus, our sense of worth. And before that even is Aries, which Mars rules, and that's our identity. Do I know who I am? If I don't know who I am, how do I develop a sense of worth? In the astrology chart, Taurus worth comes after identity, comes after I am. So anyway, those are just all thoughts to think about. So to me, Saturn retrograde reality testing and this lunation cycle is occurring within that context. I'm just looking, I want to see how much time I've been talking for. 27. Oh, I've been going a long time. I'm going to stop this right now, actually, and then I'll post another one on the full moon. Or maybe this will be my full moon talk. I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to leave it here because I think I can only do 30 minutes actually on this. I use Screencastify, and I think that's all I can do. So anyway, I'll leave it there. I hope there was something useful or helpful. Thank you for listening, and have a beautiful day. And if you're listening to this and you haven't subscribed either to my YouTube channel or to my Substack, go ahead and subscribe. I would and like, and if you like and comment, that lets me know that this is helpful, and it helps me. It gives me kind of inspiration to continue. So thank you so much for listening, and have a beautiful day. Take care. Bye.